Nationwide, it's a time for journalism where there is sort of distrust of journalists and the work that they do. And I think a lot of that does have to do with the lack of transparency between publications and the people who are reading and consuming the news. And I think that for so long, journalists have tried to stay out of the story, that they haven't been really transparent about how they've been telling stories. And I think that having this transparency campaign is so key because we're really opening those doors. My name is Harini. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Daily Cal, and I use she, her pronouns.
Hi, my name's Amber Tang. I'm the university news editor, and my preferred pronouns are she, her, hers. So as the university news editor, I'm basically in charge of all coverage of the ASUC, given that it is related to the university. So I oversee all elections coverage, all ASUC meeting coverage, etc. So usually when we have an ASUC story, we always try to reach out to the relevant parties. We always try to make sure that we're unbiased. So we reach out to people in the ASUC, we reach out to spokespeople in the ASUC, and we also try to reach out to other people and students on campus that might be affected, just so that we can really get a well-rounded, unbiased opinion. I think it's really important to conduct a transparency campaign because a lot of people don't really understand how the reporting process works and all the extensive steps that we really go through to make sure that our articles are factually correct and accurate and that they're unbiased.
My name is Caitlin Hodge. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm the opinion editor at the Daily Californian. So I run the editorial board, and it consists right now of 10 members. And so we meet each week, or actually twice a week, and we discuss issues within the news that relate to the community of Berkeley. And in our discussions, when we vote on a topic, we decide the angle, and through those discussions, I write each editorial. And this is relevant because during ASUC elections, those individuals who are on the board are the people that are part of the discussion, the interview process, and the research process that decides who we're going to endorse on the editorial board. So the opinion department and the editorial board exist independently from different departments. So that's why we're allowed to have ASUC endorsements and we're allowed to have opinions because it's the opinion department. And the news department is separate. So people who are on news are not people who are a part of this. So the editorial board met for ASUC elections, and so when we were discussing which referendum we should support, we looked at the interviews, we looked at the research that we did, we looked at how the referendum was written, the intent that went into it, and as a board we discussed the pros and cons of each, and through voting on each referendum, the majority opinion of the board was what was endorsed. And so in each discussion that we had, that was the basis for our editorial endorsements that I wrote. Another part of the editorial board's endorsements were looking at the ASUC senators. So what we did is we broke up into groups of 2, and each group interviewed 6 to 7 different senators, and we had baseline questions that we asked every single senator, and then we had other questions that were based off of the senators' platforms, and then we used a set of standards looking at how passionate senators were, their past experience, looking at how realistic yet forward-thinking their solutions were, in order to gauge who we wanted to endorse. And so in each group, the 2 individuals interviewed those senators, and then when we came together, we talked about what each senator's what their platforms were. We also looked at the set of standards that we created, and as a group, we deliberated looking at all of those, who we were going to endorse, and then what order that we would endorse them. A part of our ASUC endorsements for the editorial board was looking at the executive candidates who were running for office. And that was one of our most extensive processes. The first part of it was an interview. So we offered each candidate an interview with the editorial board. And for these interviews, the majority of the editorial board was there to interview with them. And these interviews all took place in person to ensure that everyone had equal opportunity to express themselves and ensure that it was a face-to-face interaction. And so in those interviews, we had set questions that we asked each position, as well as we looked at each individual candidate's platforms, and we created questions based off of those platforms. And then the other part that was considered in our endorsements was the ACC Elections Forum that I was the moderator for. And the questions for this forum they were created by the editorial board. So before the forum, we again created a set of questions that were standardized for each candidate. So rather than specific questions like in the interviews, they were more generalized. Say if there was something that candidates in a position both addressed, then we created a question based off of that. For our endorsements, we based our discussion off of their platforms, our own individual research, the interviews that we had, and also how they did in the debate. And for all of our endorsements, we're not looking at the parties or whether these individuals are running independently or with a specific party. We're looking at their proven commitment towards students, the work that they've done, that they can prove that they've done, and how well they will serve the campus community, because that's what we care about at the end of the day, and that's what we believe like our endorsements are for, is to advise students in making the best decisions that will support the campus community, and to vote for individuals who really represent their values and who have proven that they will and continue to fight for them.
Hi, my name is Chantal Lee. I'm the managing editor at the Daily Californian, and I use she, her, hers pronoun. As the managing editor, I oversee all the content we produce, and so when it comes to ASUC coverage, that means that I work really closely with News and Opinion, since we do both unbiased news coverage of the ASUC elections, as well as editorial endorsements of the candidates for each elected position and the referenda. I worked with Amber, our university news editor, to make sure that we got the candidate announcement stories out in a timely fashion. If they were embargoed, we made sure that they weren't released until we were given permission to publish that content. And I worked with Victoria really closely to make sure that we were really fair in our process for the news stories, so that we were offering all candidates photos. And then I worked with Amber also to look into more long-term coverage of ASUC elections. And then I also worked with her to cover our ASUC Elections Forum, where we live blogged it. And then, of course, at the tabulation ceremony, we did live coverage of the results and made sure that those articles went up right away. And then on the other side of the spectrum, I worked with Caitlin, our opinion editor, to make sure that we were getting our editorials out in time for the elections. We wanted to make sure that while they were close to elections, it also gave our readers enough time to read through our content and see who we endorse for these positions before they cast their votes. And so I worked with Caitlin to make sure that we had all the candidates come in to do in-person interviews for executive positions, and that all the Senate candidates, we were interviewing them as well, so that we could come to an informed decision about their platforms and whether or not we wanted to endorse these candidates. So that's kind of my process. It was mainly focused on news and opinion, just to make sure that all the content was coming out in time, that everyone was getting fair treatment, and that our coverage was really holistic.
Hi, my name's Nick. I'm the night editor of the Daily Californian, and I go by he, him, his. As the night editor, I'm the head of the copy editing department. So after things are written already, they go to either me or to one of the other copy editors. Then we check for grammar, AP style, Daily Cal style, check all the proper nouns, make sure they're correct. Basically just polishing what the writers have already done.
Hi, I'm Victoria. I'm the creative director here at the Daily Cal, and I use she, her, hers pronouns. For our ASUC coverage, we want to make sure that our news coverage is as unbiased as possible. So as far as photos, making sure all the candidates have the same opportunities for staff photos, offering our photo editors to take photos for them, and then also making sure our layout is unbiased. So we want to make sure that each candidate has the same space in the paper and the same sort of treatment visually. For the tabulation ceremony, we coordinated with our photo editors and a few photo staff members to figure out the best way to get everyone for the tabulation ceremony. So we got there a little early and we made sure everyone was positioned for the different parties, the different candidates, making sure again that we had kind of unbiased or as unbiased possible coverage of everyone. and that we could get photos of everyone that we ended up using for our front page layout announcing the elections results the following Monday. We want to show that our coverage is truly unbiased and that we are giving every candidate a fair chance and a fair platform in our newspaper.
I think it's important that we're transparent with the community about how we produce our ASUC coverage because for a large part of the spring semester it does make up a big portion of our content, and it's just important for us to tell our community how that content is being produced, that news and opinion are separate departments, and that the news coverage doesn't influence our opinion editorials about endorsements, and just help our community understand how we hear these stories, and how we come up with these angles, and why we report the news the way we do.